That's how I lost my workshop. When I walked through my garage door after 10 days fishing up at Lake George, the first thing that hit me was the smell. Gone was the familiar scent of sawdust and WD-40. Instead, it smelled like vanilla candles and some expensive perfume that sure wasn't mine. I'm Griffin Hayes, 58 years old, and I've been retired from the electric company for 3 years now. That workshop in my garage, I spent 6 years building it after my wife passed. Every tool, every workbench, every storage cabinet, all hand-built. It was my sanctuary. I dropped my fishing gear by the door and walked slowly toward my workshop space. My heart was already beating faster, like my gut knew something my brain didn't want to accept yet. The roll-up door was closed, which was weird because I never close it during the day. I hit the button and watched it roll up. That's when my world stopped. My workbenches were gone. The pegboard where I had organized 30 years worth of tools empty. In their place stood these bright white tables with ring lights attached, cameras on tripods, and makeup mirrors with bulbs around them. The concrete floor had been covered with some kind of fake wood flooring. My tool cabinet, the one I'd built from solid oak, was nowhere to be seen. Surprise. The voice came from behind me, sweet as poisoned honey. I turned around slowly. There was Ruby, my daughter-in-law, standing in the doorway with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was wearing workout clothes that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. Her blonde hair perfectly styled like she was about to film something, which I was starting to realize she probably was. "What the hell did you do to my shop?" My voice came out rougher than I intended. "We upgraded it, Griff. Isn't it amazing? This space has such good natural light, and with these ring lights, it's perfect for content creation. Landon and I needed a proper studio space for our business." My hands started to shake. I closed them into fists. "Where are my tools?" Ruby sighed like I was a child having a tantrum. "Everything's safely stored away. Don't worry. We rented a storage unit. It's climate controlled and everything. We thought you could use the spare bedroom for your little projects now. It's got better heating anyway, and at your age, you probably shouldn't be working with all those heavy power tools." Every word was a punch to the gut. I didn't scream. I didn't give her that satisfaction. I looked her straight in the eyes that now had something I'd never seen before. Contempt. That's when I understood something that broke my heart. To her, I wasn't a person. I was just an old man in the way of her plans. "You want this space for your business?" I said, finding a calmness I didn't know I had. She smiled wider, thinking she'd won. "Exactly. We're going to make so much money with the proper setup. Ruby's got almost 20,000 followers now, and with professional lighting perfect," I continued. "Then you can get your own place to run it from." Her smile froze. The color drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug. "What did you say? You heard me, Ruby? If you need your own space so bad, go find your own house. This one's mine." But what I didn't know in that moment was that this confrontation was just the beginning. Because Ruby hadn't acted alone, and what I was about to discover over the next few days was going to destroy me in ways I couldn't even imagine. Because when you trust the people you love, you never expect them to stab you in the back, especially when one of those people is your own son. Ruby looked at me like I'd lost my mind. She let out this nervous laugh, the kind that sounds fake even to the person making it. "Griff, you can't be serious. Kick us out. But Landon is your son. This is his home too. I bought this house," I said, and my voice sounded firmer now. "I paid for it with 30 years of climbing poles and running wire. Nobody asked my permission to touch my tools." That's when Landon appeared in the doorway, my son. The boy I'd taught to use a screwdriver, who I'd taken to work sites when he was little so he could see what real work looked like. He came shuffling out in joggers and a t-shirt, looking like he'd just rolled out of bed even though it was already 2 in the afternoon. "What's all the yelling about?" he asked, running his hand through his messy hair. "Your wife turned my workshop into her little video studio." I told him, feeling the anger starting to break through the calm I'd been holding on to, without asking me, without even telling me. "Did you know about this, Landon?" My son avoided my eyes. He stood there looking at the floor like when he was 8 and I'd catch him in a lie. "Dad, Ruby said it was a surprise. We wanted to modernize the space so it would be more functional. I didn't think You didn't think," I interrupted him. "Or you didn't want to think." Ruby walked over and grabbed Landon's arm in what was supposed to look protective, but seemed more like she was marking her territory. "Griffin, you're being dramatic. We just made some improvements. The garage was so outdated, full of old stuff collecting dust. We did this for everyone's benefit." "Everyone's benefit," I repeated, feeling something hot rising in my chest. "Where's my benefit in all this?" Landon finally looked at me. "Dad, calm down. It's not that big a deal. We can set up a nice little workspace in the spare room. We can even buy you some new tools to replace the old ones. I don't want you to replace anything for me." I cut him off. "I want my tools. I want my workspace. I want to be respected in my own damn house." The silence that followed was thick and uncomfortable. Ruby squeezed Landon's arm tighter, and I could see her mind working, calculating her next move. "Griffin, I think you're being a little selfish," she said, and her tone had changed. It was colder now, more calculating. "This house has 3 bedrooms and a 2-car garage. Why do you need all that space when you're just one person? Landon and I are building something here. We're thinking about starting a family soon, and we need room to grow our business, and then find your own house for that family," I said. Landon sighed, frustrated. "Dad, don't be like that. Where are we supposed to go? We live here. This is our home." "Your home," I repeated slowly. "What about mine?" I needed to see my tools. I needed to confirm this wasn't some nightmare I was having. But first, I needed to know exactly what they'd done. "Show me this storage unit," I said. Ruby and Landon exchanged a look I didn't like. "It's getting late," Ruby said. "Maybe tomorrow. Show me now." The storage unit was 20 minutes away in one of those concrete block buildings where people dump stuff they don't want to deal with. Unit 247 was about the size of a walk-in closet. When Landon rolled up the metal door, I felt sick. My tools were thrown in there like junk. Boxes stacked on top of each other with no labeling. My table saw pushed against the back wall with other equipment piled on top of it. The humidity had already started doing damage. I could see rust forming on some of my hand tools. I opened one box with trembling hands and found my collection of chisels just thrown in loose, their edges banging against each other. In another box, my father's hand planes were wrapped in newspaper like someone was packing dishes. The wooden handles on some of them had already started to warp. "We were careful with everything," Ruby said from behind me, but her voice sounded hollow. I picked up my father's level, the wooden one he'd used for 50 years before passing it down to me when I started my apprenticeship. There was a crack down the middle where someone had dropped it. "This was my father's," I said quietly. "We can fix that," Landon said quickly. "A little wood glue, you can't fix 50 years of history." I stayed there for another hour, going through box after box, cataloging the damage. My drill press had a bent table. Someone had used my finish nailer as a hammer. You could see the dents. My router bits were in a coffee can all mixed up, some of them chipped. But the worst part was finding my project notebooks. I'd kept detailed records of every piece I'd built, measurements, wood types, techniques, mistakes I'd learned from. 40 years of accumulated knowledge, water-stained and moldy from the humidity. "Dad, we're sorry about the damage," Landon said as we locked up the unit. "We'll replace anything that's broken." "You can't replace experience," I told him. "You can't replace the time I spent organizing this stuff just right so I could find it when I needed it. You can't replace the feeling of walking into my shop and knowing exactly where everything was." They followed me home in silence. But as we pulled into my driveway, I noticed something I'd missed earlier. There was another car there, a silver sedan I didn't recognize. "Who's that?" I asked. Ruby brightened up. "Oh, that's Maya, my business partner. She's been helping us set up the studio while you were gone." That's when I started to understand that this wasn't just about Ruby needing space. This was bigger than I'd thought. Maya turned out to be this 20-something girl with purple hair and more camera equipment than a news crew. She was setting up what looked like a professional lighting rig in what used to be my workshop, directing Ruby on where to position the white backdrop. "This is going to be perfect for product shots," she was saying as we walked in. "The natural light from that window plus the LED panels and you'll have zero shadows." She looked up when she saw me. "Oh, you must be Griff. Ruby's told me so much about you. This space is amazing. So much potential. Like my 30 years of collected tools and carefully organized workspace was just wasted space waiting for someone younger to come along and use it properly. "Maya's been helping us understand the business side," Ruby explained, practically bouncing with excitement. "She's got connections with brands that want to sponsor content creators. We could be making $5,000 a month just from affiliate marketing." I watched them fuss with the lighting setup. These 2 young women treating my sanctuary like their personal playground. Every adjustment they made, every cable they ran across the floor, felt like another nail in the coffin of my old life. "I need to make some calls," I said, and walked into the house. But instead of calling anyone, I sat at my kitchen table and tried to process what was happening. This wasn't just about storage space or Ruby's hobby. This was about them taking over my life, one piece at a time, and Landon was letting it happen. Around 8 p.m., Maya left, loading her car with some expensive-looking camera gear. Ruby and Landon spent the evening in their new studio, and I could hear them through the walls, talking about content calendars and engagement metrics like they were running General Electric instead of filming Ruby opening makeup packages. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about my father's broken level, about 40 years of project notes rotting in a storage unit, about the fact that my own son had helped strip away everything I'd built without even asking. Around 3 a.m., I got up to use the bathroom and noticed light coming from under Landon's bedroom door. I could hear him talking quietly, probably on the phone. I shouldn't have listened, but something made me stop outside his door. Told you it would work out, he was saying? Yeah, he was upset at first, but he'll get over it. He always does. There was a pause, then the storage unit was Ruby's idea. He can still do his little woodworking projects, just not here. We need this space if we're going to scale up. Another pause. Mom, I know it seems harsh, but you didn't see how much stuff he had in there. 50% of it was junk anyway. Rusty tools he never used. Wood scraps he was saving for something special. We're doing him a favor by forcing him to declutter. Mom, he was talking to his mother-in-law, Ruby's mother. They'd all planned this together while I was gone. The payment's only going up by $600 a month, Landon continued. He can afford it on his pension, and once the business takes off, we can help him with expenses. It's an investment in the family's future. Payment going up. What payment? I know forging his signature wasn't ideal, but the bank wouldn't approve the refinance without it. Dad's credit isn't great since Mom died, and he never updated his income information after retirement. We had to streamline the process. My legs almost gave out. Forged signature, refinance, they hadn't just stolen my workshop, they'd stolen my house. I made it back to my bedroom somehow and sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process what I just heard. They'd refinanced my house without telling me, using forged documents, and they'd been planning it for weeks, maybe months, while I trusted them to house sit during my fishing trips. The next morning, I acted normal. I made coffee, read the paper, said good morning when they came downstairs. But inside, I was planning. Landon, I need to see the paperwork for that storage unit, I said over breakfast. Sure, Dad, it's in our room somewhere. I'll find it later. And I want to see our mortgage statements, too. I need to update my records. Ruby and Landon exchanged a quick look. Why? Ruby asked. Is something wrong? Just want to make sure everything's organized. You know how I am about paperwork? That afternoon, while they were both out, Ruby at the nail salon, Landon at his marketing job, I went through their room. I wasn't proud of it, but they'd forfeited their privacy when they decided to forge my signature. In Landon's dresser drawer, underneath some old t-shirts, I found a manila folder. Inside was everything I needed to know and everything I didn't want to believe. Mortgage refinance documents showing a new loan amount of $185,000 on a house I'd almost paid off. My signature on every page, except it wasn't really my signature. Close enough to fool a bank employee who was processing dozens of applications a day, but different enough that I could prove it was forged. There were printouts of emails between Landon and Ruby, planning the studio renovation while I was away. Messages about managing Dad's reaction and keeping him calm until everything's finalized. And worst of all, there was a business plan. 15 pages of projections about Ruby's influencer potential and how much money they could make with proper equipment and space. They'd calculated everything down to the penny, how much they needed to borrow, how much the monthly payments would increase, how long it would take to pay it back if Ruby's follower count grew by 20% per month. They'd turned my home into collateral for their get-rich-quick scheme, but at the bottom of the folder I found something else. A business card for a legal aid lawyer specializing in elder financial abuse. Someone had written, in case of emergency, on the back in handwriting I didn't recognize. That's when I knew I wasn't the first person this had happened to, and I knew exactly who I needed to call. I called my daughter Scarlett that same afternoon. She was in court in Seattle, but when I told her it was an emergency, she found a recess and called me back within an hour. Dad, what's wrong? You sound terrible. I told her everything, the workshop, the storage unit, the forged mortgage documents. I could hear her getting angrier with every detail. Those bastards, she said when I finished. Dad, this is mortgage fraud. This is elder financial abuse. They could go to prison for this. I don't want them to go to prison, Scarlett. I just want my life back. Can you get to a scanner? I need you to send me copies of everything you found. And Dad, don't let on that, keep acting normal until I get there. You're coming here, I'm getting in my car right now, I'll drive through the night. This ends tomorrow. Those next 18 hours were the longest of my life. I had to sit across from Landon and Ruby at dinner, listen to them talk about their business plans, watch them use my kitchen like it was their own, all while knowing what they'd done to me. Ruby was particularly chatty that evening, going on about some brand deal she was negotiating and how they'd need to expand their setup soon. We're thinking about converting the spare bedroom into a secondary studio, she said, cutting into the steak I'd grilled for them, for different types of content. Maya thinks we could be making $8,000 a month by Christmas if we invest in the right equipment. That's nice, I managed to say. Landon seemed nervous, though. He kept looking at me like he was waiting for something. Finally, after Ruby went upstairs to take a bath, he came and sat next to me in the living room. Dad, I know this transition has been hard for you, but I want you to know that everything we're doing is for the family. Ruby and I were building something here that's going to benefit everyone. How's that, son? Well, once the business is profitable, we can help you with expenses. Maybe take over the mortgage payments entirely. You could retire completely, not have to worry about money. He was trying to sell me on my own financial abuse. The kid I'd raised to tell the truth was sitting in my living room, lying to my face about stealing my house. That's thoughtful, I said. But I can handle my own expenses. I know you can. But why should you have to? Family takes care of family, right? Right? Family takes care of family. Not family steals from family and then tries to make the victim grateful for it. Scarlett arrived at 6 a.m., looking like she'd been driving all night because she had been. She was carrying 2 laptop bags and a briefcase, dressed in the kind of sharp business suit that told everyone she meant business. "Where are they?" she asked. "Still sleeping. Ruby doesn't usually get up until 10. Good. We need to talk strategy before they wake up." For the next 2 hours, Scarlett went through everything with the precision of a surgeon. She photographed the forged documents, researched the mortgage company's procedures, looked up state laws on elder financial abuse. "Dad, this is a slam dunk case. The signatures are obviously forged. Look how the G in Griffin is different every time." And they left a paper trail a mile long. These business plans, the email communications, they documented their crime for us. What happens now? Now we give them a choice. They can fix this voluntarily, or they can deal with the police and the district attorney's office. When Landon and Ruby finally came downstairs around 10:30, they stopped dead when they saw Scarlett sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread everywhere. "Scarlett," Ruby recovered first, putting on her brightest smile. "What a surprise. When did you get here?" "About 4 hours ago. Sit down, both of you." Something in her voice made them obey without question. Scarlett had that lawyer tone that didn't accept arguments. "Let's start with this," she said, sliding the forged mortgage documents across the table. "Can either of you explain how my father's signature ended up on a refinance application he never saw?" The silence was deafening. Ruby looked at Landon. Landon looked at the floor. "We can explain," Ruby started. "I'm sure you can. You can start by explaining where you got the $85,000 in cash-out refinancing you took against Dad's house." "How do you? I'm a lawyer, Ruby. Finding information is what I do for a living. Now answer the question." Landon finally looked up. His face was white. "Scarlett, it's not what it looks like. It looks like mortgage fraud. It looks like elder financial abuse. It looks like you stole $85,000 from your father and turned his workshop into your personal business space without his permission." She opened her laptop and turned it toward them. "This is the State Attorney General's website, the page on elder financial abuse. The penalties start at 5 years in federal prison." Ruby started crying. Not the pretty kind of crying she probably did for her videos, but ugly, scared crying. "We were going to tell him," she sobbed. "We were going to pay it back, when your business plan here says you'll break even in 18 months. That's assuming Ruby gains 500 new followers every month and maintains a 15% engagement rate. Do you know what percentage of influencers actually make money? 3%. 3. Scarlett stood up and walked around the table like she was addressing a jury. "Here's what's going to happen. You have 2 choices. Choice 1. You sign documents admitting to the fraud, agree to reverse the refinance, restore Dad's workshop exactly as it was, and move out within 30 days. Choice 2. I call the FBI field office in Albany, and you both get arrested for federal crimes." The room was dead quiet except for Ruby's sniffling. "We can't reverse the refinance," Landon said quietly. "We already spent the money. Then you figure out how to get it back," Scarlett said coldly. "Sell the equipment? Get a loan. I don't care how you do it, but you're going to make this right." "We can't get a loan," Ruby said through her tears. "We already tried. Nobody will approve us for $85,000, then you shouldn't have stolen it in the first place." For the next hour, Scarlett laid out exactly what they'd done wrong and exactly what they were going to do to fix it. The business equipment would be sold. They'd take out personal loans to cover what they could. The storage unit would be paid for a full year, and they'd hire professional movers to bring everything back and set up the workshop exactly as it was. And if any of Dad's tools were damaged, you're replacing them with identical models. Not similar, identical. That means finding vintage tools from the same manufacturers. They signed papers, legal documents that Scarlett had somehow put together in the few hours since she'd arrived. Ruby's signature was shaky, but she signed every page. Landon looked like he was signing his own death warrant. "You have 45 days, Scarlett told them. That gives you time to find an apartment, sell your equipment, and get Dad's workshop restored. If you're not out by then, or if the workshop isn't back to his satisfaction, the deal's off and I file criminal charges." They were gone within a week. Not because they'd found an apartment, but because they couldn't stand to be in the same house with me anymore. They moved in with Ruby's mother temporarily, taking only their clothes and personal items. The professional movers came the following Monday. Watching them bring my tools back was like watching a funeral in reverse. Every workbench, every cabinet, every carefully organized toolbox returning to its proper place. Some things were damaged beyond repair. My father's level couldn't be fixed. The crack went too deep. But Scarlett had kept her promise about exact replacements. She'd spent 3 days on antique tool websites finding a level from the same manufacturer, same year, even had similar wear patterns. It's not the same, I told her as I hung it back on its hook. No, it's not. But it's the best we could do. The restoration took 2 weeks. When it was finished, my workshop looked almost exactly like it had before. Almost. You could tell if you knew what to look for small differences in the organization, tools that were close but not quite right. But it was my space again. Ruby's influencer career never took off. Without the professional lighting setup and the cash for paid promotions, her follower count started dropping. Last I heard from Scarlett. She was working at a department store makeup counter, trying to rebuild her life from scratch. Landon found a new job at a smaller marketing firm, making about half what he'd been making before. The professional references from his old job weren't great. Apparently, having FBI agents ask questions about your personal finances doesn't look good to employers. They never did pay back the full amount. The bank agreed to reverse most of the refinance, but I ended up losing about $15,000 in fees and penalties. Scarlett said we could sue for it, but I didn't want to, I just wanted them gone. 6 months later, I was in my workshop working on a jewelry box when I heard someone knocking on the front door. It was Landon, standing on my porch with his hands in his pockets, looking like he'd lost 20 pounds. "Hi, Dad." "Landon." We stood there for a long moment. "Can I come in?" "I want to talk to you." I let him in, but we didn't sit down. He stayed standing in my living room, looking around like he was seeing it for the first time. "Ruby and I got divorced," he said. "It's final as of last week." I didn't say anything. She blamed me for everything falling apart. Said I should have stood up to you and Scarlett. But the truth is, Dad, I knew it was wrong from the beginning. I knew we shouldn't have touched your stuff, shouldn't have forged your signature. I wanted her to be happy, and I thought maybe we could make enough money to pay you back before you found out. That was a hell of a gamble, son. I know, and I lost. I lost everything, the house, the marriage, your respect. My job prospects are shot because of the investigation. He looked directly at me for the first time since he'd walked in. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did to you. I stole your life's work and tried to make you grateful for it. That's not something a son does to his father. I studied his face. This wasn't the same man who'd helped Ruby convince me that stealing my workshop was somehow for my own good. This was someone who'd lost everything and finally understood the cost of his choices. I can't say I forgive you, I told him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I appreciate you coming here and saying this. He nodded. I'm moving to Phoenix next month. Got a job offer there. Fresh start. Good luck with that, Dad. Yeah. I'm sorry for all of it. I'm sorry I wasn't the son you deserved. After he left, I went back to my workshop. The jewelry box I was building was for Ivy, the woman I'd met at the senior center's woodworking group. She was 60, widowed, with a laugh that reminded me of my wife. We'd been having coffee together for a few months. I picked up my chisel, not my father's, but one that had the same feel in my hand, and got back to work. The wood was maple, smooth and forgiving under the blade. Each cut was precise, deliberate, honest. Outside, I could hear the neighborhood waking up. Kids riding bikes, dogs barking, life moving forward. My workshop smelled like sawdust and WD-40 again. Everything was back where it belonged. Not the same as before, but maybe that was okay. Maybe some things need to break before they can be built back stronger. Family isn't just about blood, it's about respect. When someone steals your life's work and calls it love, that's not family anymore. That's exploitation. A man's workshop isn't just a place to store tools. It's where he keeps his identity, his history, and his dignity. Defend it like you'd defend your own soul.